I'm going to start with something that might feel a little disruptive, but I promise it's going to make a lot of sense. The reason AA, church, God, meditation, worship, or other spiritual practices work for some people isn't primarily because of belief. It's because of neuroscience. And I say that deeply respectfully for those who feel supported by their spiritual tradition and those who are re-examining or redefining them. I work with a lot of professionals who are actively deconstructing their faith or disentangling from high control religious systems. One of the healthiest parts of deconstruction is learning to ask, what helped me? Why did it help? How do I recreate those benefits in a way that's healthy and aligned with who I am now? That's what today's video is about. If you're someone who has been redefining your beliefs or carefully stepping back from high control structures, please stay with me, because what I'm going to talk about today is not about returning to dogma. It's about reclaiming the practices that support a stable, healthy brain. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Dr. Joe, and I help professionals and executives manage stress and enjoy life sober. I've spent decades in the clinical world, and I've walked this path personally. And my approach is grounded in positive psychology, neuroscience, and real-world recovery support, and the habits that actually change the brain. I also work extensively with people who are deconstructing. One of the hallmarks of healthy deconstruction is identifying what worked for you, why it worked, and how to reconstruct something healthier and more aligned with your values. And here's the grounding truth for today's conversation. Debate aside, substance use disorder is a brain-based condition. So recovery must include practices that intervene on brain health. Whether you are spiritual, not spiritual, formally spiritual, anti-spiritual, or somewhere in between, you still have a brain, and certain human practices support its healing. So let's break down why so many spiritual behaviors help people recover, even if they don't believe in anything supernatural. Every major spiritual or philosophical tradition, religious or secular, has built-in habits that support a regulated, stable, and resilient brain. This is not about belief. This is about biology. And these practices map directly onto the evidence-based habits that support recovery. There is a truth many people miss. There is a long-standing myth that the spiritual part of recovery only works if you believe in a deity. But when we zoom out to the neuroscience, we see something entirely different. Across world religions, spiritual traditions, and many peer support groups, the habits associated with spiritual practice are exactly the habits that support a recovering brain. Social connection, ritual and routine, meaning and purpose, awe and reflection, service and volunteering, creativity, meditation or contemplative practice, personal growth and accountability, emotional inventory, community, belonging. These habits change and stabilize neurotransmitters. They literally build the new brain required for long-term recovery. This is why I often say, if you stop drinking but don't build a brain that supports sobriety, you end up restless, irritable, and discontent because nothing has actually changed. Spirituality works not because of magic, but because these habits biologically shift the brain into recovery-friendly functioning. Before we go further, I want to reiterate something. debate aside, spiritual, religious, secular, atheist, agnostic, deconstructed, reconstructed, a substance use disorder involves the brain. Therefore, successful treatment must include activities and habits that intervene on the brain. Neuroplastic rewiring, regulation of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, stress response recalibration, reward system repair, executive functioning support. Again, this is not about belief. This is about biology. So let's break down a few components that repeatedly show up in spiritual traditions and in recovery and why they work. First, let's talk about one of the most universal parts of human experience: connection. Social connectedness. You can find this in churches, mosques, synagogues, meditation sanghas, AA, smart groups, and volunteer communities. However, you can also find it in running groups, knitting groups, book studies, photography classes, and each of these have additional neuro benefits. Social connection releases oxytocin, reduces stress hormones, and is one of the strongest predictors of recovery success. Humans heal in connection. Recovery happens in connection. And spirituality at its core creates connection. Next, let's talk about something that gets overlooked but has massive neurological benefits: ritual. Ritual could be lighting a candle, showing up at the same meeting every day, morning meditation, having a journaling practice, evening reflection, a prayer practice, an intentional gratitude practice, stretching before bed. Rituals provide predictability, and the brain loves predictability. Structure creates predictable neural patterns that help calm the nervous system, improve focus, stabilize mood, and reduce impulsivity. And recovery absolutely depends on these shifts. Now, let's move into something more emotional and incredibly powerful: awe. This can come from a sunset, a choir, a mountain view, music, art, the night sky, a walk in nature, music that lifts you, a moment of stillness. These are all awe practices. Whether you call that spiritual or just being human, awe heals the brain. Awe is measurable in the brain. It reduces self-focused rumination. It decreases inflammation, and it increases well-being. Now let's talk about another universal need, one that shows up in every recovery model in every spiritual tradition: purpose. Meaning and purpose give the brain direction. They stabilize mood, increase resilience, and reduce depression. People often return to alcohol because they feel aimless. Purpose fills the space that substances used to occupy. You don't need religion to have meaning, but you do need meaning to feel whole. Purpose is a SAMHSA dimension of recovery, and research shows that having a sense of meaning stabilizes mood, strengthens resilience, and improves relationships. It supports long-term sobriety. Now let's talk about one of the most underestimated recovery tools: service. Helping others activates reward pathways in the brain that are deeply healing after addiction. It creates a sense of belonging, purpose, and achievement. It reduces stress, increases happiness, and supports emotional regulation. This is why so many spiritual traditions emphasize helping others. It's not just morally good, it's neurologically good. This one is so important. Service is universal across religions and supported by neuroscience. Volunteering activates the same reward circuits as food and sex. Yes, really. Service decreases depression, anxiety, and stress, and increases happiness. It improves cardiac health and promotes self-confidence and meaning. It is one of the most brain-potent healing tools. Let's move into something a lot of people don't associate with spirituality, but it's always been there. Creativity. Art, music, dance, storytelling, poetry. These have been part of spiritual expression for thousands of years. Creativity activates neural circuits that restore reward functioning, reduce anxiety, and expand emotional capacity. If you used alcohol to manage emotions, creativity is one of the most powerful replacements. Creativity activates reward pathways, lowers cortisol, and increases neural integration. And finally, let's talk about practices of going inward. Confession, journaling, meditation, prayer, moral inventories, mindfulness, breath work. These practices help you regulate emotions, interrupt automatic thoughts, evaluate patterns, increase self-awareness, make intentional choices. Whether you call it prayer, meditation, or quiet time, the brain benefits in similar ways. Recovering brains need structured reflection to interrupt old patterns and build new ones. This is why AA works for some and why other pathways work too. AA, SMART, Dharma, Women for Sobriety, Life Ring, She Recovers, Sober Faction, Embrace Your Today, Happiest Sober, This Naked Mind Path, all include practices that improve the brain. This isn't about which path is right. This is about whether the habits associated with your path support neurobiological recovery. Spirituality works because these habits work. Peer support works because that works. Rituals work because that works. Meditation works because meditation works. Service works because service works. Whether you attribute your recovery to God, community, structure, routine, or meaning, it is these brain-based habits doing the heavy lifting. So, for my deconstructing clients, healthy deconstructing involves identifying what worked, why it worked, what harmed you, what you want to keep, what you need to discard, what you want to rebuild in a new, empowered way. This is reconstruction, not of belief systems, but of practices that support a stable, regulated, enjoyable life. You don't have to return to a belief system to return to habits that heal your brain. Let's get to the bottom line. Whether you call it spiritual practice, brain hygiene, emotional sobriety, recovery capital, wellness, or ritual, your brain benefits from activities that regulate, stabilize, and nourish it. This month isn't about religion. It's about reclaiming practices that have supported humans for thousands of years and that current peer-reviewed evidence-based science now strongly supports. This is how you become the architect of your recovery and intentionally build a brain that supports the life you want. So, during Spiritual Literacy Month, I want you to explore not doctrine, not dogma, but the human practices that support a stable, regulated brain. Because you are the architect of your recovery. And these practices, whether spiritual, secular, or somewhere in between, are the building materials. If you are a professional or executive looking to manage stress and enjoy life without alcohol, check the description or the link tree for resources to help you build your recovery blueprint. Like, subscribe, and share this if this reframed something for you today.